I'm here to help women reset and rewild, to embrace and prioritize the pauses in order to reclaim their peace and power. I'm Dr. Michelle Peris, director of the Poppy Clinic and founder and CEO of the Wild Collective. As a disruptor, naturopathic doctor, wife, and mama, I've created a global movement and sacred space for women to rise together. Here, you'll break through limitations, romanticize your life, and unlock the magic of your divine feminine power. My life's work is rooted in community, lifting women into their most powerful, authentic selves, while empowering clinicians to elevate their practices with a transformational, community-driven model. I lead a thriving, passion-fueled business and naturopathic practice brimming with abundance, where I can guide women to invigorate their lives through sisterhood and elevate healthcare with a cutting-edge transformational approach. I've witnessed firsthand in my practice how this model sparks consistent health transformation, creates flourishing communities, and brings profitable success. You can have it all, a life filled with abundance, contagious joy, and untethered potential. So pull up a seat. It's time to pour into yourself and tap into your intuition and design a life that's wild, free, and uniquely yours. And I'm going to show you how. This is Wild Medicine. Welcome back to another episode of Wild Medicine. I am your host, Dr. Michelle Peris, and happy summer. I hope you're having a great summer. It's always interesting to see who's interested in health in the summertime, because I think a lot of people love to unplug and step into a different energy, which can be healing in it and of itself. I know that's like a funny in it of itself. I always look at like the spectrum of health, and there is value, obviously, to like unplugging from the everyday rigidity and routine of things that can add a real refreshing, energizing approach to our lives. I feel like so many of the women I serve, whether it be in Wild Collective or in our Shed Metabolic Reset program, we can get really bored and a bit numb with the rigidity and the routine of the everyday. And so there is this beautiful piece of being unhinged, unleashed, unplugged in the summertime that I think has a therapeutic value in the healthcare space. So that's really the nature of this conversation today. Is like, how do we blend these two worlds, right? So how do we make room for us being a little bit more flexible, a little bit more relaxed, a little bit less routine oriented, and not sabotage all of the work that we have done, let's say in the winter months or in the other times of the year. Let's call it the school year. If you've got children, then you really relate to this. But most of us relate to that, the essence of that type of routine, that September to June, there is a certain type of approach that we all have to being disciplined and routine oriented and organized and all of the things. And then there's this summertime vibe that there's a little bit more of an unplugging from all of that and unleashing and untethering of all those expectations that most of us, I think, even if you don't have kids, can relate to. And I would say for most of my patients, this can be the time where we struggle most, where we have difficulty figuring out like what is the routine in the summertime that is onerous, that doesn't sabotage, that doesn't take me too far away from my long-term healthcare goals or weight management goals, but also gives me the invigoration of a lack of routine, of play, of sleeping in, of letting go, of totally surrendering and being way more adventurous oriented. I made up a word there. And I think both worlds can collide, and we can do this without it being too catastrophic. So that's the nature of this conversation today, is as a naturopathic doctor, as someone who has really been very disciplined in her own healthcare journey, healing from burnout and being very, very consistent with my routine. How am I blending those two worlds, because I also love a summer. I love not having to get up early and make lunches for the entire household. I love sleeping in. Like there are so many things about summer that I think are essential for me being excited for the fall to come and get back into a routine. Like I really think we have to be honest that these sides of us exist. Always an aside with me, but an observation I've had lately with patients around maintenance, because maintenance, anyone can lose weight, especially if the program is solid and gets results and takes it seriously. Like anyone can be successful in that. The real test of a good program, a good system of care, is patients' empowerment in the maintenance phase. Like how well can they be equipped to be able to maintain the results themselves? Because that's where the secret sauce of long-term success is going to really be, right? And one of the observations I've had lately is that patients who tend to do better in maintenance are very honest about what sort of things, sort of habits they've created over a lifetime bring them joy, make them feel balanced or human, even though, and what I mean by that is like the rest of the world tends to have poor eating habits. I just saw a post that said it used to be 88% of Americans were metabolically unfit. It is now 93%. There are only 7% of the American population that is metabolically fit, which is terrifying. But this shows you that the majority of people do not think in a more health conscious, integrative way, or longevity way. So you are unique in your thinking when you are health conscious and you are trying to do the right thing or health conscious thing for yourself majority of the time. So what I was saying there with that is that patients that tend to do best with that approach, long-term approach, is that they're honest about what really makes them feel like themselves, makes them happy, and they're willing to work within those confines. So what do I mean by this? I've seen patients struggle in maintenance, and mostly because, they liked routine and the results of our reset program. And then they go back into their everyday life. And instead of easing their way back in or finding healthy swaps, they kind of launch themselves back in, or they totally restrict themselves from things they used to do. And then they end up binging in some kind of emotional way when something comes awry. And, as a great recent reminder, the only constant we have in our life is that, or certainty that we have in our life, is that change is constant. Unless we get radically honest about where we're at, what brings us joy, and where we tend to sabotage or where we tend to get emotional, we're going to have a really tough time building out a new long-term plan. And so, because life is going to happen, stressful things are going to happen. There are going to be demands on your time that were unexpected. And unless you have a lot of this dialed in and a lot of honesty with yourself and your healthcare providers, you're going to have a really difficult time finding solutions. So patients who I've seen struggle in the past, whether it was totally to restrict themselves from everything that they had before a reset, or to dive fully back in without trying to find a slow way of integrating their new level of achieved health into their everyday life, they seem to struggle. Those who say, okay, I do like a dessert. I do like having something wonderful at the end of my meal. I do need some kind of snack at 8 p.m. that is satiating, that feels like popcorn or chocolate or whatever the thing is. And so when we can get honest about that, we can build out new routines and we can find healthier swaps for these choices, but still honor your goals. So there gets to be this zone where you navigating your life just from a more healthful manner. So can we swap the chips that you were eating at night with popcorn that you make at home? Can we swap the high sugar chocolate bars for a more ketogenic or healthier, no sugar chocolate bar that you can make at home or purchase? Can you swap out the cream or whatever it is that you're eating at nighttime for protein ice cream that you make at home? Like there are just so many ways. Healthier cheesecake. Like I've seen all these beautiful ideas come about in our community as a result of being honest about where we're at and what we want to do with that information. So that's a really exciting place to be, because it's like you don't abandon who you are, right? I eat at 8 p.m. every night. I have a dessert because it makes me feel super excited about life. I love it. It's just a very conscious and intentional decision about what I am eating. And I want the same for my patients, and I want that same information to be planted into your mind about what could you do to work with who you are and just make healthier, more conscious decisions. So that was a bit of an aside. The overarching theme of this episode is how do we maintain our results in the summertime and not slip too far away or self-sabotage because we're honoring a phase of a different part of health, which might be more about surrendering and letting go and adventure and joy and sleeping in and hitting snooze and all of the things. You know, again, this is one more aside, and then I promise I'll dive into the meat and potatoes, for lack of a better way of saying it, of the episode. I work out every single morning. I have, not always, I have for the last 4 years, or 5 years actually, because I worked out for a year before I did my own metabolic reset program, and shed 30 pounds. I have been getting up every single morning and working out for 30 minutes a day since that health journey started. And one of the things I will say about that is once that became a routine, it just became a part of who I am. It actually helps me feel better. And, even though I still do that, and in the summertime, and now I have teenagers, which is like really fun once you grieve the fact that they're not your babies anymore. They sleep in, and now I am too. So I've really started to give myself permission to have a summertime vibe. I'm not getting up as early to work out, but I'm still doing it every morning before the day starts. So, is there wiggle room in your life to find some flexibility or find a different way that makes you feel that summertime vibe without totally abandoning the routine that got you healthy in the first place? It's just like with meal prep, all the things. So here are the 3 things that I think everyone can consider implementing in their life to make sure that they are honorous of their healthcare goals and also have a really fun summer full of adventure and social connection and gathering and all of the things. Like we hear it all the time in our practice, especially with the summertime. It's like one is never a good time to do a reset, which I get. But 2, there's lots of social gatherings. And so how do we navigate these pieces appropriately? So tip number 1 is to ensure that you're getting at least 30 grams of protein at every meal. Now, what's really cool about the research is that when we front load our calories earlier in the day, meaning we're eating majority of our calories at breakfast versus dinner, we have more success from a weight management and maintenance perspective. And I will say one of the greatest tools that we invested in over the last couple of months in our shed program was an AI tracking, like macro tracking device that our patients get to use so that we can observe and give feedback around nourishing themselves and their confidence in that maintenance phase. And I will say the one place where most of us tend to struggle is getting enough calories and protein at breakfast. And that is going to be key for long-term success. The research just shows that. So we really want to make sure that we are, and I think coming from a world, and I am guilty of it too, coming from a world that was really celebratory of intermittent fasting and really highlighting, first of all, most of that research back in the day when it was coming out was never done on a woman's body. So this hormonally cyclical individual who is not a mini male does not fare in the same way with intermittent fasting. And so I think that was part of my weight gain story, is that I created some weight loss resistance as a result of years of intermittent fasting and chronic stress. And a lot of my patients are similar. They're like, I'm not hungry at breakfast. I'm like, respectfully, after we reset in our program and heal metabolic inflexibility, you should wake up hungry. And most of our patients are quite successful in that eventually, because we then become innately more tethered to our intuitive wisdom, like how our body was designed to eat and thrive. And it is normal to feel hungry at breakfast. So we want to front load our calories. We want to front load our protein. Nobody binge eats in the morning. So binge eating, emotional eating, sabotage in the evening has everything to do to inform you that you probably didn't do the rest of your day appropriately for your metabolic health. And so That is one quick fix, is like creating a beautiful breakfast that really feeds the machine, as I say, and sets you up for a better blood sugar balanced day. Number 2, be a basic bee when it comes to meal prep. There is good evidence now that those who have the best results in maintenance eat very similarly day in and day out. This episode is brought to you by our Shed Metabolic Reset program. Look, I know there's a lot of programs out there and it can be very overwhelming, especially when it comes to weight loss and long-term fat loss and finding the right program for you. We have an incredible metabolic reset program, one that does thorough investigative work up front, looking at blood work metrics, helping educate you, a really solid, simple plan to follow in the reset phase, as well as long-term education around how to maintain your weight loss for the long term, how to optimize your health, how to increase metabolic flexibility, and how to build your plate so that you are nourished and the strongest version of yourself. Our program includes a lot of care and support with our integrative healthcare team. It is a medically supported program. We include community support, education support, as well as daily mindset calls. We are all about optimizing your health for the long term. This is the exact program that helped me shed 30 pounds and keep it off for 4 years and counting. So if you feel like a reset is something you would like to consider, a pause to help calibrate, come home to yourself, lower inflammation, boost your energy, learn how to confidently build your plate for longevity, then please head over to poppyclinic.com and you will see that there is a pop-up quiz that will get the process started of seeing if Shed Metabolic Reset program could be for you. If it is, we will connect, and I cannot wait to support you in living the most aligned, harmonious life, one that reclaims peace and confidence in your body and teaches you how to eat for long-term health. I'll see you soon. Now, for some of you, that's like the worst thing I'm ever saying. And for a lot of us, that's like a relief. I'm 4 years into healing my relationship with nourishment and my body. And I tell my patients all the time, it gets easier with every passing year. It really, really does. I'm pretty neutral towards foods these days. I like variety in the sense of eating different fruits and vegetables, whatever is local or from my garden or naturally ripe at that time of year. Like, I try to be honest of the cyclical nature of our food, and I eat very similarly every single day. So my breakfast has been the same for 4 years for sure. And I love it. I look forward to it every single day. It's 500 calories, 42 grams of protein. It is dialed in, but it does create, it's a variety of sources of protein. It's a variety of fruits. It's a variety of fiber. So there is a variety, but I would say this is true for my breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The formulation of how I make my meals is exactly the same. Why is this really important? We tend to feel really overwhelmed. And if we're honest of adventure in other areas of our life in the summertime, it's like we forget the fundamentals. You can keep your fundamentals and still have a lot of adventure and fun. Right? So in the summertime, I have been picking like a lot of asparagus. I've been super into mushrooms lately. Whatever I can get from my garden, whatever is, on sale at the grocery store, whatever is widely available. I am roasting, steaming, sauteing those vegetables, and I have them on hand in my fridge, and I make bowls for lunch and dinner. I have different protein sources, whether it's chicken, beef, that's pretty staple for me, pork as well. I mix and match my proteins, my vegetables. I often have sweet potato as my complex carbohydrate because I love them, but other potatoes work too. Cottage cheese. I'm obsessed with hot honey, like obsessed. I just mix raw honey and Frank's Red Hot, and it's so delicious. So I create variety through what is locally available at any given time of the year or frozen. And then I mix and match, but how I feed myself is the same day in and day out. And what that has created for me this year that I have become far advanced from last year is there's literally no struggle, no surprises. My macros are dialed in. I know how much protein I'm getting. I don't have to overthink. I always say, like, you Steve Jobs your meals. Like, Steve Jobs wore black to work every day going to Apple because he didn't want decision fatigue on little decisions that need not have any exhaustion attached to them. That is going to be a key to success for weight management in the long term, especially when you're going into more debaucherous months, if you will, or more adventurous months of the summer, right? It's like, what can you do that creates a safe foundation, a consistent foundation, one that you don't have to overthink about or get overwhelmed by or get fatigued by. It's just like you follow the same rudimentary rules. And this is working super well for me. There's a lot of variety in my diet, but how I'm providing that for myself in terms of not creating any overwhelm is by doing the same thing day in and day out. And when we do that, we create this safe expectation for ourselves, the safe containment of like, this is what we do like Sunday to Thursday, whatever you want. 85% of the time I am dialed in. I know exactly what I'm eating, understand. And then, if it is of interest to you to go out and eat at restaurants or have alcohol, which I'm not advocating for at all, actually, especially if you're trying to manage your weight, alcohol, there's nothing that disrupts weight management more than alcohol, in my opinion, and creates a lot of unnecessary calories and distress. And it just doesn't feel good as you age. Like, you're probably onto it. It feels terrible. Anyways, creating that simplicity is going to be very, very key. And it allows for you to then come back to that. You go on vacation, of course you're going to eat differently. What's really cool is to see is that our patients this summer are going on vacations. They are going away. They aren't, tracking their macros in the same way, or, not exercising as much, but walking a lot. And their weight is so stable. Like, it doesn't need to be overcomplicated when metabolic flexibility is intact, which is why I'm so grateful for having a reset program, because it really helps so many factors for patients, but creating a new environment of metabolic flexibility that permits this lifestyle of like 85% of the time I do the things I know I need to do, strength training, eat clean, meal prep, all the things, sleep. And then it permits this like freedom of going on vacation, not having to be so hyper vigilant and not coming back to like this shocking amount of weight gain, right? So that's a beautiful place. Really being super basic when it comes to our eating for the majority of our week can be very, very helpful and in terms of long-term success, one of the key factors. So very, very important. Number 3, if you have events you're going to, and there's going to be all types of food, and consciously, this is the important thing, that you do not want to eat things that no longer align for you. This is a conscious decision that you're making. It's not like a sacrificial, like, I don't want to eat it because then I'll feel bad. But no. It's like, I don't want to relate to food in that way anymore, these types of foods in that way anymore, because I don't feel good. It doesn't feel like self-care to me. It doesn't feel like alignment to my goals, right? So people will always act almost like a victim of their circumstance, of like, but I'm going to this party and they serve the whatever. You relate to that however you want to relate to that. But if you don't want to consume things that no longer align for you, right? Like, so if I'm going to a party, yeah, of course there'll be chips and dips and desserts and, usually burgers and hot dogs. Like, I'll find a way. Usually there's also a veggie tray. Usually there's also a salad. I'll have the burger patty and the salad, right? Like, I'm also like ruthless for myself. And I don't think everyone is going to be like me. I understand that, but I'll bring my own food if I want to. I do not care. I am that girl. But you can relate to that information however you want. You can find your swaps and you can be very intentional. One of the things you can do, if you don't want to find yourself mindlessly snacking on things that are provided that you wouldn't normally have in your own house, but you tend to not feel like you have enough strength to resist when it's there, is actually taking some protein powder and water and drinking it before you go. So you actually stabilize your blood sugar. You actually fill your belly with high protein so that you're much less likely to binge, So then that way, even if you do indulge in the things that you like chips or popcorn or chocolate or whatever, you're likely not to eat and consume as much of it as you would have had you not filled your belly. So there's some really good evidence behind, even if people struggle with snacking before dinner or overeating dinner, putting protein powder in water, anywhere between half a scoop to a scoop before dinner, also helps you not overeat in the evening. Again, better weight maintenance and long-term weight balance happens when we front load our calories and when we are consistent with our blood sugar and our protein throughout the day. And so if we can add in these pieces, we can take radical responsibility for our results. And we can find this beautiful way of like you could say, Michelle, I love chips and I don't want to not have them at a party. Great. What can we build in to your plan that is onerous of that? So if you have the protein and water before you go, you're a lot more likely to consume less than you would have had you gone hungry and with an empty belly. So there are very simple things that you can do, being consistent of spreading out your high protein meals throughout the day, having at least 30 grams at every meal, being very consistent with your meal prep routine, Monday to Friday or whatever that spread is. Like 85% of the time, if you can follow the rules, it's usually pretty easy to manage your weight, especially if you are metabolically flexible. And adding protein powder to water before any major event where there's going to be a plethora of food that don't align with your goals. The thing is that we're still as a whole, so highly emotional with food. Food and emotions are tethered. Food and social acceptance are tethered. Foods and people pleasing are tethered. And so many of us sabotage for so many other reasons. One of the things I'm most proud of in our metabolic program is all of the mindset pieces that we've included to help us sit with those big emotions, sit with better boundary setting, sit with the parts of ourselves that have notoriously not felt worthy enough to hold our own boundaries and goals in the opportunities of where someone else might be uncomfortable or triggered. Those pieces need to be a part of your long-term weight management goals, because otherwise you're likely to just pattern out to everything you've always done, even if you are successful in a reset or some kind of program short-term to lose weight. We really need to look at how do we long-term want to optimize our health for the long term? How do we want to find weight maintenance easy? How do we want to relate to food differently? How do we want to neutralize the charge and not feel the need to people please? So many people are like, but I went to their house and they made cookies and they said they made them for me. And so they eat them even though they don't want to eat them. The thing is, that is a problem. That is a problem beyond consuming foods you don't want to eat. It's like really bad boundaries. It's people pleasing. It's all of the things that make me more and more certain that if you do not have community and mindset as a part of your overall program or healthcare experience, you are not likely to succeed in the long term. You might have some short-term wins, but I've been at this for a really long time, and I know this to be true for myself and for my patients. And those who can withstand the discomfort of honoring themselves and their health and set boundaries are much more likely to succeed. And those who are onerous of these tips to help them maintain their boundaries, it gets that much easier. And so I really just wanted to put this episode out there this summer because I know there's a lot of people that truly do struggle. And there are people who are having conversations in my office like, I'll be back in the fall because, the summer is the summer. And I just, and so I've had these conversations in my office on repeat, like, how do we blend these worlds? How do we have a really fun, adventurous, untethered summer where we're not so rigid and responsible, because that's essential for health, right? We need certainty and uncertainty. So this is this season of uncertainty and just like letting yourself live, but not totally abandon everything you've learned, not totally sabotage all the gains you've made in your health. These worlds are possible. I'm living proof of it. No, absolute living proof. Here are the simple things I've done to help me maintain my weight for the last 4 years without any kind of struggle and being very, very attuned to my body, but also like really reveling in the freedom of summer, the breathing room, the slower pace, the snoozing, the sleeping in, the staying up later, all of the things. These worlds can collide, and I hope you found these tips really helpful. So until next time, stay wild. Thank you so much for tuning in to Wild Medicine. I am so grateful to have you here, and I hope you're feeling inspired and empowered. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star rating. It helps us reach more incredible women just like you. And before you go, quick reminder, the information shared on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose or treat any medical condition. Please consult with your healthcare provider for personalized advice and care. And if you're ready to take inspired action and dive deeper into your own health journey, please visit us at poppyclinic.com. Let's rewild and reset your health together.